Yossi, was machst du?
Baruch Hashem, very good.
It's always good to spend time with you. I'm thinking back to the times we've spent together over the past year, working side by side with each other for the Nyanya of the Moised, and it's exciting to see where we've gone. It's even more exciting to see where the 𝗀𝗲𝗏 good that there is to be done. So let's take a few minutes to do a little reflection of where we came from and perhaps where we're going. That work?
Sounds like a great plan. Yeah.
For starters, how did you come across my coaching services?
That's a good question. I don't remember exactly what it is. Obviously, I've been familiar with what you're doing for shluchim for a few years, quite a few years. And I guess we've gone in and out of each other's orbit. Coaching in general is something which has an incredible amount of value. And as things began to heat up here in Greenwich in a positive way, I realized that I need to invest more in this important element of shlichus, which is, having someone who you can talk to, someone who knows the ins and outs of the challenges that a typical shliach faces, even though nothing's typical about shlichus. And really, it's the objectivity, or the objectiveness, whatever the right word is for that you bring to the picture, not being emotionally connected, which is, the ability to be able to see things through and to prevail. Be'ezras Hashem.
So it sounds like you had been hearing and timing was right. Was there something, were you able to trace it back to a story, an individual event, or something that gave you the insight that this is the right thing for me and this is the right person?
I'm trying to remember what it was. Because I do remember the first conversation that we had where I was seriously considering engaging you. And that was really the product of a small personal exercise that I had done. Maybe it was on your advice, or maybe it's what led me to connect with you. I did a real brain dump of everything that was filling up my head and not allowing me to move forward in a calm way. Because there's so many things, there's so much pressure in the day of a shliach, and it just came up to this certain point where I just needed to throw it all down. I took a big 24 by 36 24 inch by 36 inch poster board, and I just threw everything down. It was like a brainstorming or webbing, whatever it is that they call it, and I saw all of the craziness and all of the things that were going on. And I remember it was in that context of trying to create a path forward through the Moised's challenges that I reached out to you.
So picking up on that, what would you say, where was the Moised before we started working with each other?
The Moised was facing a challenge of healthy growth. In other words, we all come to a certain point, Baruch Hashem, by the Rebbe's brachas, we have success. And part of that success means that we need to make the 𝗀𝗵 for even bigger success, because we invest our efforts, we make the initial 𝗀𝗵, whatever initial means, either early on in our shlichus or early on in the next stage of our shlichus. And we look towards growth, and Baruch Hashem, we get that growth. So growth comes with incredible challenges. If you're not able to manage it properly, it can get overwhelming and things can fall through the cracks. The most important things can fall through the cracks only because the shliach set is being taken in so many different directions because of this growth. It's all great stuff, but it becomes not such great stuff when the real point of the growth, which is connecting to Yidden and being mekarev them and engaging Yidden more and more in our meistis and in 𝘂𝗵𝗹𝘂𝗰𝗵𝗶𝗺, when that falls through the cracks, then something's seriously wrong. So that's the challenge that we were facing.
Is that another way of saying that the ikar shlichus, the mitzvahs on the ground with people, was becoming that was losing its focus in the name of all the other room that the growth was demanding?
Correct. And besides for the fact that that's not good be'etzem, because we're here for a certain purpose, the Rebbe sent us out to a community to connect with Yidden and to bring them closer to Chassidus, closer to the Rebbe, closer to the Eibishter. So besides for the fact that as a result of all of this beautiful challenge called growth, that gets, unfortunately, not the attention it deserves, it becomes a vicious cycle because, and here's a really key point to everything, what we don't pay enough attention to is the fact that the real kalim for growth in every aspect of growth, financial growth, more people participating, the real kalim for that is focusing on the shlichus. So when you're ignoring that, not only are you not focusing on what you should be, but everything else is going to lose out. You're not going to raise more money by not focusing on the people, or let's put it this way, you're not going to raise more money by trying to figure out how to raise more money at the expense of putting on tefillin with another yid, learning Torah with another yid. So, and that's really the key challenge. That's the vicious cycle that we need to get out of.
Okay, so within that challenge, what were some of the big problems or big challenges that were happening in the Moised that you knew now was the time to solve them?
The big challenges that I knew that now was the time to solve them. I hate using the word typical, but the challenges were that I needed to raise insane amounts of money in short amounts of time. That was the pressing challenge. One pressing challenge. The other pressing challenge was that, at least from my perspective, I really wanted to make sure that the Moised itself, meaning the people that work there, the shluchim and the staff, the team, would operate in an efficient way and move forward without the challenges of, things falling through the cracks.
Okay, so when you say, I don't want to say typical, but typical, in other words, it's not a new story. It's not a novelty reality.
Correct.
With it. So do you remember the conversation we had about the difference between not knowing my numbers and not wanting to know my numbers?
Yes, that was a key element when we started off. And that was something that I found extremely helpful, even though, in a way, and this is kind of really interesting about what's happened over the last year, you and I haven't paid a lot of attention to that, but I think the way you guided me early on about that particular issue helped put it into the right context. Not that it's solved or resolved. It's an ongoing issue. Knowing your numbers is a very, very important part of shlichus. But I remember very clearly that first I presented it to you as something which was really scaring me. And it was really, it was fascinating what happened, because maybe you have to trigger my memory a little bit in terms of what exactly the conversation was. But I remember it went along something like this. You asked, what are the things that are sitting on your head that are really making you nuts? And one of the things that I said was, I feel like I don't have a good grip on my numbers. And what you did at that time was just, you helped me focus on just doing what needs to be done. It's not the boogeyman that you're making it out to be, which was itself a very helpful thing, because, and this goes to the core of the value of our ongoing coaching or discussions that we have, fundraisers that we have, and that is that most of the things that we're afraid of are not nearly as scary as we make them out to be. And that is a very, very strong 𝗲𝗃𝗃𝗀𝗃, which is something that we know. And much of the things that you've taught me are things that we know, and it's only that you bring it to the fore and apply it in a very real way. And the fascinating thing about what happened in that particular element of, the challenges that we were facing, knowing my numbers, was that I just took the time to crunch the numbers. It took me however long it took me, I don't know, hours or days. It wasn't extremely long, and it wasn't very, very scary, but incredibly, the next time we had a conference call with the bank, which is Be'ezras Hashem financing this major acquisition,
Amen.
The banker said on this conference call to the Chabad team, which means myself and the board, the Balabatim who were working with me on this major transaction, he said something along the lines that he's never seen a rabbi who has such a good grip on their numbers. Those were the words that he used. He almost verbatim about what it was that I was afraid of. And, it, Baruch Hashem, came out in the best possible way, gave them the confidence that they need. And it's just, I guess, it's a fascinating thing that...
How the Chabad team appreciate hearing that from the banker about their rabbi?
And it obviously made a very, very beautiful impact on the board to be able to, it gave them a little bit more confidence. Of course, it gave all of us the confidence that we need. But the beauty of that was that, sometimes you take the things that you are most afraid of right there. If you just grab it by its horns, you're going to discover something which goes beyond what you would have imagined it could be. Not only is there nothing to be afraid of, but there's a gem that's lying under this challenge, and that's what you've helped uncover.
That's interesting. I was talking yesterday with my coach, and we're constantly looking out for revelations, how to make the job easier, something else to relate to. Somehow the seesaw came into play. Seesaw, ups and downs, seesaws. And what fell into my head was, you have to be riding the waves on the sea, going through the ups and the downs and the challenges to be able to say, I saw that I couldn't see the gem till I'm riding the challenge. But what's at the end of it is I saw Taka that the 𝘄𝗵𝗁 had a plan, and the brachas are larger, as you just said, larger and bigger than I could ever have imagined. So I'm hearing a lot about taking the mountain out of the mountain, taking the fear out of the fear. What would you say, looking back at the past 12 months or so, 12, 14 months, what would you say has happened to you as the leader of your Moised since you've joined this ongoing conversation? Aside for the Moised, it's a general question.
Understood. It's all connected, of course. Talking about fears, so obviously there's a fear, that particular fear that I just described is something that some shluchim may have, they may not have. I think when it comes to the challenge of fundraising, that's probably the biggest and most common fear issue that shluchim grapple with, and the growth in my ability, Baruch Hashem, to approach this in an entirely different way. I'm not there yet. I can't say that, I look forward to fundraising, but there has been a major switch, and it has shown in fascinating results. And that is that instead of approaching the concept of going to ask a 𝗲𝗶𝗶 for money, there are a number of things that we need to place in our head, or place our head in particular space, which makes the whole conversation a different conversation, and the results show. What I mean by that is that if you apply the ideas, the fundamental ideas of bitachon to something like fundraising, we are not and should never feel desperate for this money that I'm going to ask this particular 𝗲𝗶𝗶 for. The 𝗬𝗵𝗹𝘂 has all of the money in the world. The Rebbe put us in a particular shlichus, which will succeed be'ezras Hashem. The point of connection that we are designated as shluchim to make is between a particular 𝗲𝗶𝗶 and this incredible mission of what needs to be accomplished, which will be accomplished. And of course, that's where our bitachon comes in. We know that bitachon is a fundamental element of everything in life, and we have to apply it to this very specific detail of this interaction that I'm going to have right now with this 𝗲𝗶𝗶. So instead of coming to the 𝗲𝗶𝗶 with the thoughts and the fears and the feelings in our hearts and minds that we're very familiar with, like, gosh, if I don't get this gift, I don't know what in the world I'm going to do. And he has to give it. Of course he has to give it. Why? Because he has so much money, and why shouldn't he give it? And we have this tension and this desperation and this fear.
How do you know this language? What you just said.
This is the language that I have lived, and I'm trying to get away from. But when you turn it around to a bitachon-based language, which is that the money is there, it's going to come be'ezras Hashem. This mission, this particular mission, the overall mission of shlichus, will be successful be'ezras Hashem. I'm curious to see if this 𝗲𝗶𝗶, who I am going to now approach, will be the one to have the shlichus, to participate in the building of this Beis HaMikdash, this Mikdash Ma'at that we're engaging in. And that's, it has to be, of course, genuine curiosity. There is nothing to be desperate about. He may say yes, he may say no. That's not going to change whether or not this thing will happen. When we come at it with that kind of approach, that curiosity, together with a feeling of generosity, not that I need to tap into his generosity, but I'm being generous with what I'm giving this particular 𝗲𝗶𝗶. I am a shliach to be mekarev Yidden. I have an opportunity here right now to bring this Yid to Machne Yisrael Yechidus and have him stand in front of the Rebbe with me at the side, and this individual has the opportunity to connect in exactly that way. Now, who's the giver and who's the taker in that kind of transaction? All of the shluchim over the years who brought the 𝗲𝗶𝗶 to Machne Yisrael, do you think it was difficult for them to do that? I don't think it was very difficult. I mean, they clearly saw in their eyes what they were providing to this 𝗲𝗶𝗶, a chance to connect. This is today's Machne Yisrael. Today's Machne Yisrael happens every time a shliach goes to a 𝗲𝗶𝗶 and says, "You want to give the Rebbe some money?" would you like to? I'm offering you this opportunity.
Have you seen financial differences in your tachlis and your results?
Very specifically, yes. I remember particularly one couple who you and I had spoken about before, and I knew it may be a little bit of a challenge. And I called him on the phone. They were down in Florida. They were coming back up. It's back and forth. And I said, would you like to have the opportunity to explore the possibility of participating in this beautiful project we are about to embark on? And his answer was no. Pretty much straight out like that. We're not going to participate in the building of this campus. Now, in the other kind of mindset, in the desperation mindset, in the ein oni ela b'das, oni as in, as you shared with me, oni is like I need, right? That's what it sounds like. So in that kind of mindset, when you get a no, what's the first thing that happens? Like the shliach's heart drops, and like you try and say, okay, you try and be nice, and you try and hide your disappointment, which rarely succeeds. But instead, I heard no, and I said, okay, would you be interested in a conversation? I'm sure, and I know that you're a very philanthropic person. You have ideas about Jewish philanthropy. There are things that are important to you. And I'm sure I could learn something from our conversation. And he said, okay, that sounds like something that I may be open to doing. It turns out he calls me back a few days later and he says, I came home to my wife and I told her our conversation. And she said, go back to Rabbi Deren and tell him that we are going to participate. Now, would that have happened had the rest of the conversation gone not the way it went? In other words, had I been like disappointed, kind of like would have just shut it down, I probably would have left him with a very bad taste. And I don't think he would have been open to his wife's idea. But he was open to it. We did have a conversation. And they made a major 6-digit pledge to this campaign. So that's a very fascinating turnaround in terms of the actual results.
What would you say was the key for you to stay present with the no, allow it to process, and then go further?
The key was to recognize that we're not desperate. Shluchim are not desperate. I'm not desperate. No shliach is desperate. And we know inherently that it's not about the money. That we're talking to a yid, and we have a responsibility to be mekar of them. And even if it's not going to be through money, we still have to be mekar of them. And we don't have to lose ourselves. There's a big picture, and every yid has a neshama, and we need to continue down that path.
Has anything changed internally, mind, heart, in the way you process a big ask? Big ask, I'm talking about $1 million and up.
Yeah, a few things. One that comes to mind automatically is, one that comes to mind is when it comes to asking for money, the ask has to be really genuine. And what I mean by that is we should ask the person if they would like to do something without any hopes or fears or expectations of what they can or cannot do or should not do. So in other words, we have this tendency of, will he give this amount of money? Won't he give this amount of money? Could he, can't he? And the real way to ask, as I've really felt over the last few months, is that we're talking about business people. And so much of our fears and our expectations or our disappointments and desperations and worries, it's all in our head. And 𝗲𝗏𝗿𝗀 don't think the way shluchim think. And our job is simply to ask them a question. Is this something you would consider? We don't know what they're going to answer. Sometimes they'll answer yes. Sometimes they'll answer no. Sometimes they'll answer, I need to think about it. But if they get the feeling that we're asking them with some sort of expectations, like maybe I asked them for too much, or maybe I asked them for too little, then that comes across, unfortunately, and it doesn't bring out the best responses. I think the key thing is that asking for money is part of a relationship. And they do this all the time. There's nothing wrong with it. It's an opportunity you're simply placing in front of them. That's what you're giving them. So why not give them the biggest possible opportunities?
Do you still struggle with the old language of, this is what I need from him and this is what I need him to do?
I do struggle with it because just over the last 24 hours, it came to our attention. I knew this may be coming, but it came to our attention that we need a lot more to do what we have to do than I thought we needed. So the first reaction is, oh, goodness. Hashem, help. Actually, that's not really the first reaction. That's a good reaction. The first reaction is, all kinds of language that just comes flowing out of your mouth, like
𝗲𝗏𝗿𝗀𝗀𝗀.
𝗲𝗏𝗿𝗀𝗀𝗀, yeah. But the real reaction is, and this is what I have, Baruch Hashem, gleaned over the last few months. Thank you. The right reaction is, okay, Hashem, you're giving me a very interesting challenge here. Right now, I'm feeling overwhelmed. And I want to say that one of the healthy things that you've shared is that when something is overwhelming, there are polar extremes of how to relate to that. One is that, oh, whatever, this is impossible, I'm not going to be able to do this. The other is like, yeah, whatever, it's in the Eibishter's hands, crazier things have happened, you just go on your merry way. What you've shared with me is the ability to say, goodness, this is overwhelming. And you just embrace it in all its pain and ugliness and burden. Embrace the burden. Like, wow, this is a big, big burden. So don't be in denial. If it's a tough situation, the first thing is to say, okay, we got a very difficult challenge to deal with here. But doing that in the context of, Hashem, you created this challenge, and I know you have very, very beautiful plans ahead. I'm going to need a lot of help. I'm going to give whatever I can to make the best possible kelim. And I look forward to receiving your brachas in abundance.
Did it work last night? Were you able to bring calm?
It did. It really did. And I think that's so important because, especially when you're in the position of leading a Moised, which means, well, frankly, the first and most closest individual to a shliach is the shlucha, co-directors, as it's called in today's generation. And then there is the other shluchim, there's the staff, and there are the balabatim that work closely with the shliach. If a shliach is desperate, if a shliach is overwhelmed to the point of, I can't do this, the entire structure of shlichus, the individuals who make up the shlichus, they follow suit. When the shliach expresses bitachon in the 𝗵'Ish, they follow suit as well. And we can't do these things alone. We need to work together with our co-shluchim. We need to work together with our close balabatim. And we need to do it in a way that everyone has a positive outlook. Otherwise,
it sounds like you're speaking a truth about Rome wasn't built overnight, and that there's an avodah that continues to be an avodah. And as you become stronger for yourself, you see the opposite of the people around you falling apart. It's that you're giving off a new energy that's helping the balabatim give bigger and better, helping the closer balabatim work better, helping the shlucha feel support in the way that she needs it. And you're bringing it back to, in a very humble way. That's the way I hear it. Bringing it back to a pnimistic avodah that you're working on, which is really inside your head and your heart, to make sure you're in the right mindset and heart set to celebrate the obvious joy and embrace the stuff that's not yet revealed joy.
exactly.
What would you say to shliach who is thinking about starting to work with me, and he's on the fence if it's the right decision?
I would say this is absolutely the right path to go. Working with you is incredibly valuable to a shliach, in as much that the Rebbe gave us the tools for how to be matzliach. And I would say amongst those tools, primary one is Tracht Gut 𝗲𝗀. We know that as a truth, and sometimes we follow it, but it's a big challenge. And the value of our discussions and coaching, your coaching, has been how to directly implement that on a very specific basis, very practical, very relevant. It's about clearing out all of the junk in our mind, and there is much too much for whatever reason. We all have, fears and concerns, and shaping a narrative, which is what Tracht Gut means, shaping a narrative that's built on the 𝘀idus of emunah and bitachon and the Rebbe's klolim of how to reach out and to be mekarev yidden. It's about taking all of those ideas, that's the Tracht Gut, making that our narrative, and then ultimately uvtachtanu or uvtachnu, that es wird sein gut. And this is something the world already understands. This is something that we've always known, but it's just a question of implementing it on a daily basis. Our days have to be shaped by the Rebbe's paradigm of Tracht Gut 𝗲𝗀.
Another ongoing daily workout.
Yeah, and it's a big avodah. It really is. It's not something that you just can arrive somewhere, but it's something that we're always challenged with. It's what we've been challenged with since what we read about 2 weeks ago in Parshas Bereshis. And the value of our discussions is how to implement everything that we know on a practical basis.
I actually had an insight today, popped into my head. I was learning Chumash, where Ram says, "What I'm childless. 𝗬𝗲𝗿𝗀𝗀, what do you have for me?" And the 𝗬𝗲𝗿 says, "Avram, Taka had garnished. Avraham, let's climb to that place." And then what fell into my head was, without Tracht Gut 𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 Taka, I mean, it's a tough matzv. Going to Tracht Gut 𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 mode, go above the mazalis, and you're going to bring down something that's has always been there, but now you have Taka made the keli to bring it down. What is what's a message that Rabbi Yossi Deren, in his 2 decades plus, close to 2.5 decades in the 𝘄𝗵𝗶𝗺 shlichus, what would you share with a shliach? Something, a lesson, a message that could be beneficial, as in your advice to a shliach, nothing to do with what we're talking thus far here.
One of the greatest privileges of being a shliach, if not the greatest, is that the Rebbe has high expectations of us. And the reason why that's a privilege, not just an achrayus, the Rebbe has high expectations. Now, we've got to fulfill them. We have an achrayus to fulfill them. It's a privilege. It's a shlichus, because not just from the perspective of it's a shlichus for you to be able to be a shliach, but it's a very specific shlichus, meaning that when the Rebbe has expectations, all of those things that the Rebbe, quote unquote, demands from us to go out and do, what the Rebbe is really giving us is an incredibly broad outlook, thinking incredibly big. And the Rebbe is really taking us into that broad world vision, which is not just, in a worldly way, but even like in a personal way. We can be, and we should be, because the Rebbe demands of us to be, the absolute best shluchim that he wants us to be. So the Rebbe opens up our minds and our hearts. We just have to allow ourselves to do it. And, a lot of our discussions have been about not selling ourselves short and recognizing the incredible beauty of what it means to literally go out and change the world.
That's somewhat of a counterintuitive appreciation for that high level that we're put into.
Right.
You're saying when a shliach enters his day, his whole approach to shlichus, embracing that achrayus, embracing the enormity of it, and realizing that it's the greatest gift. That's what you're saying. Take that route, and you'll see the fulfillment of the potential that Rebbe sees in you. You'll start having it in actuality.
Right, and we have to do it in a responsible way, in an achrayistic way. Of course, everything that I just said is something that we always know. We always bring about it, but it's the marriage of this incredible breadth and a very practical, down-to-earth, responsible application of it, which is the value of our discussions.
So, one more tidbit of advice, if I may pull out of you. What would you say to a shliach who is currently working with me? What advice would you have for that shliach?
What do you mean by that?
What does it sound like?
Advice for a shliach who is working with you. Keep going. That's something that I got kind of like I need to tell myself. Yeah, I mean, nothing comes to mind.
Sounds like a truckload in its own right. In the months that we've spent together, it's a little bit over a year now. The word curiosity, you used it earlier in the conversation. It's taken on new meaning to me, learning from you how you apply it. And I find that as I verbring with whoever it is at any given time of the day, it strengthens my ability to be present with whatever it is Hashem puts in front of me, specifically based on the side of in the formula that it was a developing formula that you and I came up with of humility, gratitude, and curiosity, to really live with that through the obvious joys and the not yet obvious joys. And as often as we talk, it gives me additional strength to stay present with that and do better, which is exactly what we're all in this for, to have a greater awareness of what the 𝘄𝗵𝗹𝗂𝗰 is and continuously celebrate what's been done on manas to do even greater.
Right, and I must say that what a lot of the things that we talk about, if not everything we talk about, is not just about fundraising, not just for the purpose of fundraising. It is really about principles that are relevant to every part of our lives and our shlichus, personal, Moised-wise, family, even, just regular avodas Hashem of every shliach, in terms of his fulfilling his shlichus on a personal level, and being the right shliach that he's supposed to be, the right chassid that he's supposed to be. And I just find the value of it, of course, because we're talking about fundamental principles from Torah and Chassidus. So obviously it's applicable to everything in life. But when you take the time to learn how to apply these ideas on a daily basis to fundraising, you're not just learning about how to apply it to fundraising, you're learning how to apply it to everything. Whether it's 𝗀𝗵𝗵𝗁, whether it's learning Rambam, whatever it may be, iskashrus, chinuch, life.
It's a great honor to be part of your shlichus in this.
Thank you.
This behind the scenes way, and the bracha that comes to mind is something that I didn't quite understand it when I first heard it, but I continue to appreciate it more and more. There's a particular clip where the Rebbe is talking to shluchim. It's upstairs in the front room of 770, in front of the elevator. It's a kinnis shluchim clip, and the Rebbe says, amongst the other brachas the Rebbe gives to the shluchim, the Rebbe says, "On the shluchim 𝗀𝗵𝗁𝗀 nachas von sich," which doesn't come easy. It comes with a truckload of work. It comes with tapping into understanding what the Rebbe wants, and it's the Rebbe's 𝗄𝗵𝗁𝗀𝗀𝗀 words, as the shluchim 𝗀𝗵𝗁 nachas von sich. So to you and to your 𝗬𝗏𝗀 and the whole mishpacha, the whole crew, the team, and to continue having nachas, creating nachas, and we should all be zeichet to be mevaser tov in the greatest measures.
Amen. Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for taking the time for the conversation. And Mitzvah Hashem, we'll be in touch soon.
Yes, Hashem. Take care.